This is the first meeting of the new committee, and I want to again thank you all for donating time and energy to this effort. This is a continuation of the first committee, of which I also chaired, and I've been asked to chair this one as well, which is why we handed out those two reports from the first committee, the kind of summation of where we were, what we had come up with, and so forth. And I thought that we would build on those with the main focus today on the feasibility study, which was some strong recommendations that the first committee had put forward. So to begin, why don't we just take a few minutes to go around, introduce ourselves. I will start. I'm Steve Knox. I live in Albany. I chaired the first committee that we had, which was a committee comprised of a lot of real great people who put a lot of time and energy into this. And I look forward to working with this committee and basically continuing that work and working towards the feasibility study. Dale, why don't you go here?
My name is Dale Drew. I'm from Conway. Local farmer. Steve cornered me in my barn one morning and asked me if I would be interested, and we see eye to eye on a lot of things. And I just want to see the feasibility study come to fruition and hopefully continue the farm.
Sandy?
Sandra Brokar, small-scale farmer in Silver Lake. Known Steve for a while. I know Amanda. I've met Dale. And I'd like to see what we can do. I don't have any preconceived ideas on this.
Yep, I'm Susan Gaudette from East Wakefield. I'm here because Amanda cornered me.
She's good at that.
No, I found that the project sounds very, very interesting. I'm the office manager at the New Hampshire Farm Museum in Milton. Been there for 6 years. We are working on becoming certified organic. Unfortunately, we're not farming right away. We've had difficulties keeping farmers and getting them to stay for a number of years. I'm also the administrative assistant in the Greater Wakefield Resource Center in Union, New Hampshire.
I'm Amanda Bevard. The County Board of Commissioners appointed me as their rep on this board. I'm also a local small farmer, raising pigs and sheep. I want to see what the experts say that we can do with the lands here at the county. And I'd like to see the lands be utilized properly. I would like to see them be accessible to the people in the county. Thanks.
Thank you. And again, thank you all for volunteering your time and energy here. Representative Mark McConkey is the delegation's representative on this committee. And unfortunately, Mark had a family conflict here, and couldn't make it. And Representative Glenn Cordelli was asked as a fill-in if he could be here today. And he said he had a meeting in Concord and might be a little late, but he'd be happy to fill in for him. So, as Amanda said, what we want to be focusing on today is the feasibility study. The first committee had basically got us all to a certain point on that, and this is what we want to continue on. And but we have some house cleaning here to do, and what we do need is we need to appoint or elect a vice chair and a recording secretary. And so I'll ask right now, is there anybody who would be willing to volunteer to be vice chair? I don't, everybody jump at once.
I'll be the vice chair.
You'll be the vice chair.
If that's appropriate.
Okay. And we need a recording secretary. And let me just flesh that out a little bit. We need, basically it's someone who keeps the minutes of the meetings. And what you'd be doing is probably at least 4 or 5 days before the next meeting, you'd be sending those out as a rough draft. And we would then approve those minutes at the following meeting. And we need to keep a written record, even though Representative Comeau and his GovernmentOversite.com website basically does an incredible job of videoing these. We do need a written record as well. So is there anybody who'd be willing to be the recording secretary?
Well, I suppose I have more experience probably than most as far as taking minutes, so I'd be happy to
Okay,
do
thank you
that.
very much. I want to thank both of you for volunteering to do that. Okay, now, time commitment. I think we want to discuss that too. The last committee met every 2 weeks. And there's so much to do, and I don't know what sort of a schedule we want to put this committee on. And I think each one of you has to decide how much time you have in your own very busy schedules that you could commit to this as well, because there may be work that would be done outside of this committee meeting that you're bringing forward. Do you think that a schedule of every 2 weeks is adequate? Do you think it's too close, every month, every week, or what? Let's give me some feedback. You're saying,
Question, when are we expected to have a report?
that is a good question.
Because that will dictate
Yes.
when we have to be done.
And I don't think, and Amanda, you jump in here, but I don't think the commissioners have given us any specific time. This is when they want the feasibility study ready to put out to bid. But let me bring up a couple points here, and I'll get into this in a little while. I've had a talk with Peter Benson, who is their advisor, role model, so forth, for funding. And we have missed their funding cycle for this time around, for the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. And he says the next funding cycle probably won't be till sometime late spring or early summer. How you doing, Lino?
Good, you?
Good, welcome. Representative Avenelli, you filling in for Mark?
Yeah, me and Glenn are here.
Pardon me?
Glenn's here too.
Yes, okay, good.
Yep.
So what we do need, so it could be that we could be finished with basically our work, and now we get kind of caught up in the funding cycle, which could be sometime into next summer or early fall, before we would know whether the funds were going to be available or not. So I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but there's no time frame. It's got to be done by the end of this year, or it's got to be done by September. We want to do along and make sure that we're as thorough as we possibly can be, so that we're ready to put the proposal out.
All right, so what is the product of this committee?
The product is an RFP.
Mhm.
It's a request for proposal in which we've outlined very clearly what we want the feasibility study to include. And this Carroll County Farm Committee Firm Report on page 29, the first committee outlined in a rough form what they'd be looking for, what that feasibility study would be. And it could very well be that we want to make some changes in that, touch it up a little bit, change the focus, but it could very well be that in 4 or 5 meetings, we're ready to go with that.
Mhm.
And then it becomes a question of the funding, because what I think we want to clearly understand is that no one is going to take this job on. No organization or individual is going to take this on unless they're sure that the money's there to pay for it. And that gets us back into the funding again. So we'd have to have some commitment from funders that, yes, we've got the money to do it. And what we don't want to do is to send out in the proposal, the RFP, well, we've got $20,000 for this, because that's exactly what it's going to cost. So we want to be sure that what we send it out is that this is what it's going to be. This is what we want. And then we'll get, hopefully, bids back, and they'll say, okay, we can do this, and it's going to cost you this. It's going to cost you $20,000. It's going to cost you $30,000. And then it's going to be up to us to make sure that we get the funding available. But what we do want to do, looking at that starting at page 29, is we want to give them a date as to this is when we want this thing done. Whether we're going to give them 3 months, 5 months, or 6 months will be the determination that we will make.
Mhm.
But we want to give them a specific time period. This is when we want the final report in.
Yeah.
And we will make that decision. Yes, Amanda?
And I would add to that the delegation has set aside $10,000, up to $10,000 of matching funding. There is no 50-50 matching or 10-20-90 matching or whatever, it's just there. They would expect, and I would expect, that we have some solid information if I have to go to the commissioners and then we have to go to the delegation and ask them to hold this money for you know, spring or whatever, that we would have a set time.
Yes.
So we start budget right away, so, you know, it's not a rush job, but the sooner we could come to some sort of an RFP, I think the better it would be for everybody.
I was talking with Ken before the meeting, and I laid out some of this time schedule to him as well. And I said, can we, I said, what are we gonna do with this 10,000? It's gonna technically end December 31st. And he says, I think we can encumber the funds, so it'll carry forward. So it's not a question that all of a sudden we gotta go back and start that process all over again. Lino, feel free to jump in at any time here, you know, with
I
comments.
was gonna say, if the funds can't be encumbered without some type of invoice. So
Okay,
that might be a problem. I don't know if it would be reauthorized by the delegation. I'm not gonna speak for them.
okay. Well, whatever paperwork has to flow with this thing to make sure those funds are there, then
Right.
we
Just
can
make sure
discuss
that's.
it, take care of it. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's why I said, I think the sooner that we can get some solid
Yes.
stuff moving,
Right.
the better it would be.
But the point I want to make is it's very likely that we will finish our job. And then it becomes just a question then of the funding cycles. As I may have mentioned, I'm hoping to meet with the head of the USDA in New Hampshire sometime within the next week or two to explore this as well. But again, I don't know what sort of funding cycle they're on. We don't just send an application in and all of a sudden they vote on it. These are very competitive funding situations here, so we'll be competing against other potential funders. And what they usually do is they say all applications have to be received by, say, April 1st, and then they'll make the decision over the next 3 or 4 weeks on them. So we may finish our job and then just be sitting here patiently waiting for the money to come in before we then can send out, asking people to bid on it, because they say they will not do it unless they know the monies are there.
Right.
And we want to understand that. So there is a time cycle here. And I know that doesn't completely answer your question, Sandy, about the time frame, but it's not all going to be in our hands.
But it does sort of, at least in my mind, sort of delineate it and what the scope of our work is. I mean, I know some of these USDA grants are extremely competitive.
Yep.
And depending on the program that you're applying through, your application deadline may be April, and the decision may not be made until September or
Yep.
October. So, but I think we need to get the good RFP.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we want to be as strong as possible. To put us in the strong, and this is where I'm hoping that, as I say, I sent to everybody an exchange of emails between Peter Benson and, Representative Glenn Cordelli, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
You did a very good time. You said you'd probably be a little late, but you've done good.
I was at a conference on human sex trafficking. in Concord.
Whoa!
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we ought to put that in our RFP.
We'll leave that out. So, okay. I sound like the teacher here now. Would you all please turn to page 29?
We get extra points if we're already there.
Oh, you do.
Gold star.
Show off. I bet you brought the apple for the teacher too. Now, as I say, this is background information, and this was the rough draft for the RFP. And as you can see, it is just basically a rough outline, what we should be looking for. And it does not give a lot of specific detail. And I think the basic premise when we start is, and this is a discussion, is how broad or narrow do we want this RFP, this request for proposal, to be? And again, using the first committee as an example, and this is a different committee, so we may want to change our direction. We were instructed to make it as broad as possible. And I just want to bring into something else at this point because I think it's important, and that is, better than a year ago, the delegation appointed Representative Cordelli to lead a committee on basically looking at some of the farmlands and so on as an educational. And I think that is a very important segment of this, and the first committee bought into that immediately. That was whatever we decided, that was going to be part of it. that the educational aspect of using these farms is, and also one time when we were doing a tour with Representative McConkey, as we were discussing that, I made the comment, is there any reason why we couldn't attach research, that educational component as well? And he said, no reason why we couldn't do that as well. So there are two components. But that's the specific nature that we want to be looking at, is just what exactly do we want covered in this RFP? And don't limit it. The last thing we want is, I'm just making up numbers here, don't go running around saying this is what it's gonna cost, but say we get $30,000 to do the study, and it's so narrow that when it's completed, somebody comes up and says, gee, you never discussed this in the study, why not? That's the mistake we don't wanna make. What we wanna be able to say is, we did cover that. If you go to page 33, you'll find that was discussed, and that just does not fit into this thing at all. So we wanna be looking at this thing in a much broader sense. Okay, so now, as you can see in the project outline, but I want to get back to one other thing too, and that's the introductory letter. This again was the mission that the first committee came up with. And I think as we move forward, we want to make the decision, we want to buy into this, because this sets the tone for the whole thing. And the commission is to find the optimal use of the county farm assets for the benefit of Carroll County residents and taxpayers. It's broad, but again, that's what we're looking for. And that was the mission statement that the first committee bought into, I shouldn't say bought into, but approved. And basically the RFP, or the request for proposal, was based on that. So right away, we're talking the optimal use. That means we're willing to take a look at almost anything, and we want the RFP to reflect that. So in starting out, does anybody have any questions or comments on basically the original mission statement? Does anybody want to add to that, change that? Because it will impact and affect the RFP.
No.
I think,
Lena, do you have that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
It's on the very front page of the
Yeah.
introductory letter, the second paragraph down. Yes.
I think when we speak about county assets, we're talking about things like the nursing home and the jail.
No, we're
and
talking
so
about
I think we ought to
the
kind of.
farm assets.
Well, here again, when you're talking about farm assets, I don't know, I just like to talk about the county lands. And try to keep it as open as possible.
Okay.
So that we can do the research, we can do the education, we can, have it open to the public. Already, a large part of Carroll County is having trouble visiting Diana's baths because of influx from other places. And I'd like to have parts, or all of the county lands at least, open for the residents to come, and if they want to go hiking or, horseback riding or biking or whatever. There's, I don't know, between 700 and 900 acres here, and I'd like to see it open. If somebody wants to go pick mushrooms, they can go pick mushrooms, or if they want to go hunting, the lands are open. And that kind of keeps it pretty narrow, I think. That's my opinion.
So are you suggesting then that you think that the word farms is too restrictive and that we should maybe change it to county lands?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know how you'd include, because there are buildings that called.
Land and buildings.
They're called, they're county buildings.
County farm, common land and buildings.
Okay, all right. Any other thoughts?
Just,
Glenn?
when I think in talking with the Kendall Foundation
Yes.
last year, they pointed out that the buildings were an important resource. So I don't think that should be discounted, in this. And I'm not sure if the mission statement you're proposing stands by itself, because in this introductory letter, it talks about 4 main sources for the farm, and I don't know if we're including that in the feasibility study, or I'd see the mission statement standing on its own, because we've had a lot of discussions over the past couple of years about hay production, wood production. For one thing here, I see that, wood production, they talk about the cordwood that's generated from the 800 acres, but it doesn't mention the fact that they've been buying wood in order to process that, to get that output also.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
a little bit misleading in that regard.
Yes.
But, if you want to use the mission statement, by itself is fine, but I don't want to be locked in terms of the feasibility study to, the county maintaining the hay fields or the blueberry patches or things like that.
The feasibility study, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I share your question on this, I think the feasibility study would make that determination. If we're talking about blueberries or wood, the feasibility study would say, based on our analysis, forget that. That just does not have a future. But I think, looking at this, is the question, does the mission statement basically, is it too restrictive? And looking at this, it says farm assets, and basically interpreting that, some could interpret as ignoring the 700 acres of woodland here,
Right.
and the buildings. And so, and as I've mentioned, we want that feasibility study to be all-encompassing.
Right.
And so, Sandy,
I have a slight, there seems to be a bit of a predetermination
okay,
on the draft for the RFP in terms of what we're looking for. Because the introductory letter from the original committee
yep,
said, find the optimal use for the county farm assets.
yep,
For benefit of county residents and taxpayers.
yep,
That can mean almost anything. But in the draft RFP, the project outline and that particular next two paragraphs, they're talking really about how can the Carroll County farm assets, I would assume, benefit a county-wide, regional-wide food system.
mm-hmm,
That could be one very nice use, but that just eliminates a lot of other potential uses. So I am, if I look just at the words here,
yep.
which do we go by?
Well, I think if we, I'm sorry, Glenn, you had,
Just a question,
Yeah.
if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the project outline in the draft
Yep.
RFP is more restrictive than the mission statement on the introductory letter.
It appears that way to me.
Right.
mm-hmm,
Now, that doesn't mean that I agree with this. I mean, I might personally agree more with a more restrictive in looking at the local food system, but I'm trying to figure out what's the driver here?
I know Steve referred back to the subcommittee the delegation had formed in terms of a learning center.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal was very much centered on an agricultural learning center and the agricultural nature. So, whether you want to make the mission statement or the outline in the RFP, more restrictive or, less restrictive, I'm just here as a substitute today.
You're always welcome. Both you and Lino.
Well, I would
It's
agree
Lino.
that with this, all right? But I'm just trying to be unbiased, trying to put my personal feelings aside for the moment.
For the moment.
For the moment, yeah.
It's very difficult.
Lino, you had some comment.
Actually, the question in the mission statement, we're in search of the optimal use of county assets for the benefits of Carroll County, could be the overarching questions, with the secondary question of regional food system,
Mhm.
agricultural learning center.
Right.
So just a flip-flop of that would be,
Exactly,
Mhm.
and I agree. We can sit here, and I'll confess myself, I have biases, but those biases may be so completely groundless as we move forward that I'll say, okay, this doesn't work. But this is where the broad scope comes in, and I agree with, I think, with what Glenn, you and Sandy are saying, is, we don't want to make it too restrictive, is what we're basically looking for is a regional local food system and excluding everything else, because we may miss the boat completely.
Yeah.
So I think this gets back to the thing, the farm assets. If we just talk about the farm assets, in effect, are we basically saying that that's the direction we want to move in, is how can that be used to create a county-wide food system and basically eliminating everything else? And as I think about it, I'm thinking that, no, that may not be the only direction that we want to lead in. If we're going to be sending out an RFP, it should be with the understanding is that we may ask whoever is going to do this to look at a lot of different things so that we can come back with information that we can say, okay, they may say this doesn't work. Let me give you an example. As some of you may recall, no, you wouldn't because you weren't here. Ed would recall. We had a woman from Norwich, Vermont, who does feasibility studies. Her name was Rose Wilson. And she came down and she spoke to the committee. And she had been hired earlier on to do a study for the Greater Concord, New Hampshire Economic Development, a regional thing. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to explore the feasibility of a commercial kitchen to help farmers in the Boston area, which is a kind of a suburb of Concord. So she went out and she started to talk to farmers about this commercial kitchen. And the farm community told her, even though she had just started this thing, doing the initial surveys, we have no interest in that whatsoever. So she went back and she said to the Greater Concord, she says, look, you're wasting your money. You wanted me to do this study, and I can tell you, there's no interest. This is never going to happen. Here's your check back. Good luck. And walked away. Now, personally, that's the kind of person I'd want to hire to do a feasibility study. Because if she's looking at something and she says, you want me to do this, and this is never going to work, then okay. So getting back to the comment about, are we focusing this thing just on, okay, how can the county farm play a role in creating a county-wide food system? And she comes back and says, that doesn't work. Then we have missed, in my opinion, a great opportunity to explore other options and opportunities as well. So it gets back to, I think we should make the decision that this should be as broad as possible. It should cover many different things. And what he or she, whoever does it, may find is, okay, you gave me 10 things to study, and I'm telling you right now, based on my study, only 2 of them are going to work. Okay, but we know that now. So when we come back to taxpayers and residents and they say, did you look at this? Yes, we did. And guess what? That isn't going to work. But this may work. So where as a county do we want to commit resources to then? Just my thinking. We want this to touch a lot. So again, we've discussed the mission statement. Several comments have been made. Maybe we want to just get rid of the word farm. That's too restrictive.
Can I say something?
Of course you can, Dale.
New to this whole committee
Yeah.
farm, I'm just a local farmer guy that wants to help and do what's right. The mission statement, if we just added the 894 acres that encompasses the county farm to the mission statement, isn't that what this committee is basically looking to do the feasibility study on? The total 894 acres that is a part of the Carroll County Farm?
I would say land and building.
Yes,
Right.
land and buildings, yes.
Right.
All that is
Yes.
encompassed in the
Yep.
894, correct?
Right.
So if we add that 894 to the mission statement, that would, anything we put in the feasibility study would cover that. Yes, no,
Mhm.
maybe? And that way we could paint with a broad brush and wouldn't be confining ourselves to the food, the blueberries, the timber, the wild mushroom picking on the trail. Anything we put in there would cover that. You can't get any broader than that, I don't think.
Okay, all
Well,
right.
and maybe we should put, if I might add to that just a little bit, agricultural buildings. so that
Yeah.
that would exclude
Yes.
the other buildings, the jail.
Well, oh,
Yes.
yeah, I agree,
If we
yeah.
just
We
put-
don't want to
Yeah,
include
we
the
don't
nursing
want
home
to
or
pick
the
wild
county
mushrooms in the
courthouse.
nursing home. Got it.
They may not like that.
Right, got
Well, does this property actually have a formal name? Is it actually the county farm? And
Carroll
if-
County Complex.
So do
Carroll
we
County
just
Complex.
capitalize?
Does the complex, does that
county
include the
farm
nursing home, the
complex?
jail? Okay, but do we want to include those?
No.
No,
I
okay.
like this idea of the remaining 890 acres of
Yeah,
land
okay.
and buildings.
Agricultural building,
Yeah,
so that it
that's not.
Let's find some wording here then.
Yeah.
We can beat this thing to death and be here at 6 o'clock still discussing it. Let's just find some wording. Okay, the mission is to find the optimal use of the county, of the 894 acres of county land and buildings?
Agricultural land. and
Agricultural land and
Yeah,
buildings?
perfect.
Okay.
There you go.
Of the 800, of the county 800,
Okay, so secretary
94
wants to.
acres.
Go ahead. I better get this right.
Find the optimal use of the county's 894 acres land and buildings? And agricultural
Agricultural.
buildings?
Agricultural land.
Yes.
and buildings.
894 agricultural acres?
Let's see, use of the county's 894 acres.
Of
The
agricultural.
894 agricultural acres.
There you go.
Agricultural acres,
And buildings.
Agricultural land and building.
Right,
agricultural land and buildings.
yeah.
Yeah.
To find the optimal use of the county's 894
Agricultural acres,
agricultural acres and buildings.
land and buildings. Yeah, and buildings, okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Amanda.
Would that include putting a solar farm on part of that land?
Why not?
Me?
It might, it might.
Now, Steve, can we jump back?
Is there something here that we're missing?
No, can we jump back to one of your earlier agenda items?
Yep,
Time commitment?
yes. Okay,
We didn't finish that one, I don't think.
okay.
Well, it just took us 30 minutes to figure out a mission statement,
Yes,
so
I
I think we
know.
want to meet every week.
Okay, okay, you holler, but is there someone who's willing to make a motion in a second on this? Let's vote on the mission
On the
statement, and put that behind us so we can move on to other things here. Okay, is there a motion?
You said the old committee met every 2 weeks?
Yes.
I will make a motion that we meet every 2 weeks.
Well, let's get, we only got one motion on the floor at a time.
Oh, we already have one?
No, we don't, but we will. I want to
I
finish the
move that the
motion.
mission for the County Farm and Land Advisory Committee, 2017, the mission statement is to prepare an RFP requesting some entity to search for the optimal use of the Carroll County's 894 agricultural lands and buildings. And the front part of it, change it however you like, because it's sort of
Okay.
awkward.
Uh,
Well,
is
I'll
it-
send out a draft and change it if need be.
Glenn.
I would move an amendment
Good, fine, please.
to add to the end of that for the benefit of the Carroll County residents and taxpayers.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes, okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made, amended, and second. Is there any further discussion?
Can you read it back, please?
Yeah.
You made a motion to, let's see, to prepare an RFP requesting some entity to search?
Yeah.
Mhm.
To search, to find the optimal use of Carroll County's 894 agricultural lands and buildings, amended to say for the benefit of, and I didn't get to finish,
Yes.
the
Carroll County residents
Carroll
and
County
taxpayers.
residents and taxpayers.
Okay. Does everybody understand the motion?
I have just a little clarification on what you said. Yes, if it were financially less burdensome, that would be to the benefit of the residents and taxpayers. Yes?
I would say that's in the,
Is
for
that
the
implied?
benefit.
Is
Yeah,
that
I don't know
implied
if
in
it's for the benefit of the taxpayers if we're doing a drastic increase in,
Yeah, it says for the benefit of Carroll County residents and taxpayers. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
That's broad, it's pretty broad, so.
Right.
Any further discussion?
I just, one question?
Yes.
When you read the motion, did you say 894 acres?
Agricultural acres
Okay.
Yes.
The buildings.
and
Yeah.
buildings.
I think, and I may be wrong, but the 894 acres includes acres for the nursing home, the jail, and the county courthouse as well. So I think it's important to say agricultural lands here, to restrict it. We're not talking about the courthouse.
Could we get a hard number as to what that we can't? We can't minus out the nursing home and the jail and.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can't get a hard number on exactly how many acres there are total yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that one of our jobs?
No,
Okay.
no. That,
Yeah, I
as
think this
commissioner,
covers it.
that is one I
Yeah,
am working
yeah.
on because different deeds have different.
The word-
And then the town, when the town redid it, they have
The word
different figures.
agricultural is pretty,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just gonna say
Yeah.
that the word agriculture restricts it right there.
So
We
it's
know
a-
we're not talking the nursing home and the county
Right.
jail and everything. Okay.
So it's approximately 894 acres.
Yeah, I think that's total. Oh, any further discussion? If not, are you ready for the vote? All those in favor of adopting the revised mission statement signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Okay.
Substitute, so we don't have.
Sandy, you want to get back to the time?
Yes, please.
May I make a motion that we meet every 2 weeks and that we limit the meetings to 2 hours maximum?
That's what we did the last, because otherwise we get carried away here. We spent 40, a little bit better than half an hour just talking about revising the mission statement.
Well,
We can get involved in this.
You know, or Dale, you can make, you make.
Yeah.
No, you're fine.
I just wanted to
It's-
limit the length of time of the
Yes.
meetings because
Yeah.
How does 2 weeks, every other week sound to Sue? Is that
I think it's
work your
acceptable,
schedule? Sandy?
That sounds fine.
Okay. Glenn, Lino? Okay, that works for me. Is Friday the best day? Dale, go ahead.
Well, the one thing I will say, I like your idea of a time limit.
Yes.
But if we're, just for clarification, if we're involved in something and we're like an hour and 58 minutes, is it okay if we carry over?
yeah, I'm a school teacher, but I won't ring the bell.
Okay, thank you.
and the same, if you're done early, you get to go
Yes.
early.
Yes, right.
And
Thank you,
if the teacher
Lino.
doesn't- If the teacher doesn't show up, you get to leave after
That's
10
right.
minutes.
We don't have to sit here just looking at each other making small talk because we
Okay.
haven't, 2 hours hasn't gone. Oh, okay. Okay, so is Friday a good day then? Every 2 weeks, every 2 Fridays, every second Friday, and we're going to limit the meetings to 2 hours. Okay.
Fridays?
Everybody's in agreement with that? I don't think
Is
we need to
3
take a vote on
o'clock
that.
an appropriate time? Is that a comfortable time? You're
Well,
open.
that would be up to Mark, I think, he would be the,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I could get here for 3 weeks'
Well,
time, but.
Representative Mark McConkey is the official
yes.
delegation.
Yeah.
Mm.
I know Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the legislature's in session down there, so those are not good days for
Right.
you. So it's either gonna be Monday or Friday. It is,
Friday afternoons are nice, because it's nice, you can wind down, this we are
yeah,
getaway time.
okay. So everybody's comfortable with the day and the time, and we'll meet every other Friday,
3 o'clock?
okay? Pardon me?
3 o'clock?
Yes,
Okay.
okay. Did we have any other questions or concerns regarding the time, Sandy?
No, I just needed to know
Yes,
because I
okay,
got some
all right.
things Friday morning.
Fine, okay. All right.
Nice.
Get on to the feasibility study, page 29.
We didn't vote on that.
On
We
the
didn't get a
fee-
second.
Oh, okay, all
I'll
right.
second it.
Okay, on the time, okay. Is there any further discussion on our scheduled meetings and time of the meetings? This motion has been made and seconded. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Susan.
All right, the feasibility study itself. And as you can see, over on page 29 under the project outline, again, it's focused on a food system here. And I think in the discussion we've had so far, we've reached the decision that we don't want it to be that narrow, but to be broader in scope. So, Amanda, go ahead.
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
I just interrupted. I like the first sentence in the project outline. To determine the best path forward for the Carroll community. And we might change that to agricultural,
Yes.
land and building.
Yes.
It's probably my last part.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Dale?
Just a clarification. We
Yeah.
have this request for proposal for the feasibility study that the previous committee came up with.
This was
Is it
just a
my-
rough draft.
Is
That's
it
all.
my understanding that we're gonna use this as an outline to do our own, or are we going to start from scratch and do our own?
I think we can revisit this and rewrite it any way we want. This was just intended to be a rough outline, so that we wouldn't be sitting here saying, okay, what was the thinking of the first committee? Because they put a lot of time and effort into this. And so, but if we feel, okay, we want to change the tone, we want to change the direction, feel free to do it. What I think is important is that this is the committee that's basically going to go forward with the RFP. And I think it has to be something that we feel a sense of ownership in, a sense that this is ours and it's not somebody else's. And all we're doing is basically being a messenger for somebody else, that we can claim ownership on this thing. So if you're stopped in the street and someone says, how did you come up with this? You can tell them. You can't say, well, it was the first committee's idea, not ours.
Okay, the reason why I ask is because I am new to this, again, I will state, and I see that it's 894 plus or minus acres.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that is. In order for me to do anything, to make suggestions or have positive discussion, I need to see what these buildings are and what this land is. And I know that's in the agenda for today.
Well,
But-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. We get rained out, Dale.
Okay.
We're gonna reschedule this for the next meeting.
Okay,
Amanda and Will DeWitt basically kind of took a rough tour of it, and the ground conditions and so forth weren't the best. And in the
Okay.
rain, we felt a sunny day might be more appropriate.
All
So,
right.
yes, we are gonna be doing that.
okay,
But we just got rained out.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay?
wonderful.
Okay,
Got it.
good.
If you pass that over,
Yeah, I can do that.
Susan and I have,
I got it. Got it, okay.
there are also pictures, aerial photos.
I want to just jump down a minute here. The scope of work requested. Does everybody understand what SWOT stands for? No. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And in some respects, I'm not going to say this is the heart of it, but if we use that based on all those different things that we want explored, then that's how they'll be measured. What is the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for each one of those? Whether it's basically the county farmlands being a hub for a countywide food system, or whatever. Whatever we want to have discussed and explored, that's the criteria by which it will be judged at. And it's Glenn.
Could I comment on some of the other points that covered under the scope?
You certainly can.
I would suggest adding that.
Are we on page 30?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Adding in between 4 and 5 that the group that does the feasibility study present a draft for review and comment to the commissioners and delegations, so that they can see if there has been anything omitted or if they have questions
Before the final report.
before a final report.
Okay, all right.
Before a public presentation?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that again, please, Glenn, so I can write it down?
That a draft of the feasibility study be presented for comment and review to the delegation and commissioners.
Okay.
I'd suggest that number 5, the public presentation of the final report be before a joint meeting of the delegation and commissioners.
Okay.
I don't know where you'd want to insert it, but I also think periodic status updates from the organization doing the RFP would be beneficial to this group as well as, you know, the commissioners and delegations.
Yes, and I agree with that. And in fact, that we've got 3 of you here, and let me just kind of jump in. In the past, I tried to keep the delegation updated as much as I could. And you've got a new sense of leadership in the delegation, and I'm hoping that door may be open a little more than it was in the past, because it certainly was my intention to keep the delegation very much involved and in the loop of what was going on. And it didn't work out quite the way that I had hoped, but I know it's the new team here now,
Right.
and because I think that's important, that's very important. Good. Yes.
And it's my understanding that that's Mark's role, and my role is to take the information from here and report it back.
Yes, yeah. I have to
So there
tell you,
should be
I'm a
two.
fanatic believer in transparency. A fanatic believer in that, to the point of it's an obsession with me. And I want everybody to understand that. In an informed society, as
It
Thomas
drives
Jefferson
much
said, democracy needs an informed and involved citizenry. And if you're not informed, you can't do your job. So yes, I appreciate those comments very much, Glenn. And this would be a good time to make a comment also. The previous committee, we had put together a survey. We actually put together a survey to send out to farmers. We had gotten a copy of the list of the Carroll County Farm Bureau, and we also had we're going to be setting up some public interest groups open to the public to get their feedback and input. And not making any accusations or pointing fingers, but Andy Kendall felt very strongly that we should not do that, because he says, and it's implied here, whoever is doing the feasibility study would want to do that as well, and maybe just go over ground that we had already covered, and it would just lose a lot. And so we held back, because that made sense to us. But as you can see, we did put that in here, in the feasibility study, that this is what we were expecting, because we want as much citizen input as to the feasibility study, what once included, and also from the farm community as well, and maybe even the loggers, if we're going to be including all the lands that are open here. Let's make it as all-encompassing as possible. It puts us on a much stronger footing. You know, everybody's going to feel, yes, I had input into this thing. Greater sense of ownership, and that's what we want as well. Glenn, yes.
It's just, rather than sending out something to all the residents, you can very easily do an online survey form and direct people via the newspaper and everything else to go to that site to
Yes.
complete the survey.
Yep. Good point, good point.
I also think that, in reference to what Dale was talking about, this outline seems to be just funneling all thought right into a local food hub production.
Great
And
plan.
I don't like that. It's like, no, we're starting here. So let's, keep it a little more open and not be tunneled down that path, because I'm not, well, I have biases of my own, of course, and I'm trying, like Sandy, not to feed in or express them, but I would like to keep this as open as possible. And although we have some wonderful local farmers and growers in the area, I think this should be a bigger thing. It should be open to the residents in the entire county somehow, not just the local things. Yes.
Are you referring to number 3?
Well, I was
something else?
referring, well, the first half of the first one, because I don't know if we want to do the Carroll County food system. I don't know if we need to analyze the Carroll County food system. I'm not sure. that we, you know, you know, that I'm not sure about. In number 3, when you're talking about just the chefs and the restaurant owners, and I'm not sure. I think we're narrowing it too narrow. I think we need to keep it open, and I like Glenn's idea about something on the internet. Go ahead, I'll take over your meeting, don't let me.
It can, I don't see a
Hold the
problem
thought, Lena, hold the thought, yes.
with including these ideas in them, as long as we don't limit it to just these. I mean, right next to the letter that goes out to the local farmers, should be a letter that goes out to the local cross-country skiers. You know what I mean? And, because there's a lot of land. And, yeah, can someone plant mushrooms on the dead birch trees in the spring and summer? Yeah. But can someone also be cross-country skiing through that same path in the winter? 100%. So I don't have a problem including these in the RFP, but I agree that we shouldn't limit to just the food
Yes.
aspect of it. But I think it's an important part of it.
Lino?
I would love to make a call on Thursday morning, put my order in for the weekend, and have it delivered and know that it's come from Carroll County.
I agree.
How many pork chops would you like?
I want 250 dozen eggs on my doorstep on Friday morning.
You bring me 250 chickens and a place to house them, I will give you 250 chickens.
Dozen.
Yeah, okay.
Dozen.
Perfect, bring it.
Every Friday.
Let me just.
That's the problem I have.
Okay, I think maybe another motion is in order here right away, because I think we're all saying the same thing, and I think we should agree on this going forward. And that is that this rough draft of an RFP is too restrictive. The focus is purely agricultural, and looking towards a regional food system. And while we may agree that this is certainly one component, one aspect of what they want the feasibility to study, it is too restrictive. And I think if we agree on that, every time we come across it on food, we just mentally eliminate that and realize this is just one aspect of it. Can we, because I think we're all saying that, can we just basically agree that this is just too restrictive in its nature and is focusing on just one thing? And I agree with Lino completely as far as the local food system, but there may be many other uses.
There is.
An educational research center down there, agro is one use. Leasing out some acres to beginning farmers to get them maybe another use. I mean, it encompasses many things. Cross-country skiing, maple sugar. I mean, there are so many uses here that we haven't even begun to think of. So let's just agree, and if there's even a motion, I'll make the motion, that basically on the rough draft, as we put this feasibility study together, the request for, it is not limited to just one particular aspect.
I think we did that by amending the mission.
We did.
statement.
Yes, I do too, I think so.
Okay, all right.
Do we have to even have this?
I think it's a good starting point. I think
Could
it
we
is.
just take any
That's
RFP?
kind of where I was headed.
Okay.
Because you know, every time I
You can't help but not to focus on that because that's what this is focused on.
Yes.
So I think it would be a good idea, like we did with the mission statement, to just start from scratch.
Okay. But we can still use this thing as far as the deliverables, general terms and conditions. We
Yeah.
just fill it in with other
Right,
things.
exactly.
But we use this.
The
for-
format, we'll use
this
the
is
format,
skeleton.
but
This is-
it's the,
Yeah.
use
Okay,
different.
but the body of it needs to be changed.
okay. So you want to start page 29, project outline? No, we've got 55 minutes. Thank you, Lino. You the official timekeeper?
I need to go back to work, that's why.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, that's, they're open at 5?
We have to get ready for the weekend.
He's gotta go.
He's gotta find some eggs.
From
I
the
got my eggs.
You want some bacon seeds? I got about 40 of them at my house now. Bacon seeds.
You know, I know Ed was part of all of this, but Glenn and Lino haven't been, but I think the focus on the agriculture was that I had done some just very basic research, and surprisingly, there's not a lot of information out there, there's not a lot of data out there from either the USDA or from the State Agricultural Department. But I had surmised, putting together some back-of-the-envelope numbers, that food sales in Carroll County are approximately $200 million a year. Now, that's a combination of the 47,000 people who live in Carroll County. It's the second homeowners, in the fact that both the Lakeland and Passaic area and the Mount Washington Valley area are major destination resort areas. So looking at $200 million, rough number. Of that, we grow approximately $5 million. And that, consider that dependency, consider the lost economic opportunity. And the first committee clearly understood that. And so I'm not making excuses for the focus of this, but the first committee clearly understood that this was a major opportunity here that we were missing on, and that agriculture could and should be a major economic driver in Carroll County. And I think that was what we collectively agreed upon and understood. And so this is where we were going with this. How can we fill that opportunity? And also, getting back to the original mission statement, what role can and should the county lands and farm play in helping us to meet that? So, but I think this committee wisely and justifiably so said, we want to expand this. We want this feasibility study to be far broader, to encompass not just the agricultural component, but all of those other components that could be as well. And I agree with that completely. But this in background. Sandy?
One of the reasons, now, Steve, I may personally wholeheartedly agree with you and with the original statements that are written here on this page 29.
Yep.
But I have also heard other ideas put forth on what to do with this property, with this particular piece of real estate, including things like sell it and develop it for housing. Fine, that is one potential use. What are the costs associated with that? You know, to me, that's one of the things that we rightly should look at to some degree, just so that we have some way of providing information to people who feel that that's what we should do with the land. That's one reason why I brought that up.
Okay. Amanda?
And I've heard some people say that what we ought to do is do like they did in other places in the country, and we should form a group that's just going to run the farm lands and agricultural lands and be totally separate from the county, responsible to the county, but be financially solvent and not have to take any money from the county to run it. And, you know, there are places, there are examples throughout the country where townships have done this with their municipal farm.
Yep.
And been successful in different ways. Some, you know, one right locally up in Albany, the Albany Forest also has farmland in it. And the Albany Conservation Commission, I believe, manages all of that. So, I mean, there's both ends of the spectrum. And I think we should look at both, we should look at everything between those two. And when I first met with Steve, I mentioned what you had said, and I mentioned we could go back to the old-fashioned way where we just farm this like they used to farm it and feed the nursing home. You know, well, those are other things, but I think this feasibility study should kind of look at those things so that when somebody comes up and says, like Steve said, why didn't you do this? We can say, well, we looked at it and this is what we had. Now, do we have to give all of this to the person or company doing the feasibility study? I'm not sure we need to do that. I think we as a committee can look at some of these ideas and maybe do a little investigation and say, you know, this really isn't feasible. One of the suggestions I was told was to put, I think they're called red deer, make it a red deer farm. And just out of curiosity, I just looked, and the fencing is astronomical.
Yeah.
And right away, you know, I can answer that person and say the initial investment is just astronomical. It's a lot. But so I think some of those things we can eliminate, but I think we ought to at least mention them, look at them. If people have ideas and they want to come and present them, or they want to share them with any one of us, that we can look at those, and then we can come forward. And maybe we'll get all done and we'll say, yep, the best thing to do is to take the old nursing home and make it a food hub. But what about the other figures? We need to know.
I think, let's look at the history here for a second as well. And probably Glenn and Lee know much more, and Ed are much more aware of this than other people. There are 10 counties in New Hampshire. 8 of those 10 counties have closed down their county farmland lands. This just doesn't make any sense at all. I've heard that Coas County, which was the last county to do it, is rethinking this a little bit. Apparently closing it down didn't quite work the way they hoped it would as well, and they're rethinking it. Now what they're gonna do, I don't know. But also Cheshire County was the last, prior to Coas, also did a feasibility study, a very extensive feasibility study. And in all honesty, what I would like to do with your permission is to basically contact them to see how that has worked out as well. I've always been a firm believer in the old adage that one definition of insanity is to keep doing something the same way and expecting a different result. And I think that this may present this committee in the county with a rare opportunity to think outside the box and come up with something that's very original and unique. That other counties may say, wait a minute, maybe we should be taking a look at this as well. There's nothing that says that we have to follow in the pattern of what other counties have done. But we may decide at the end of the feasibility study that they had the best idea of all, and that is just to walk away from it. We don't know, and we shouldn't prejudge anything that we do here. So, okay, I think we're all, Sandy,
I was gonna
Glenn, hold
ask
the thought.
a quick question. Is it possible to find out what other counties did do, what they did with the property, and when? Just.
We can do that.
I mean, that could be just
Yes.
a simple chart,
Yeah.
spreadsheet kind of deal.
As of this moment, only 2 counties basically still have any sort of operation. It's Carroll County and Grafton County.
Yes, that I know, but
Yes.
there are the other 8, so.
Yes.
Actually, Glenn goes first.
Yeah, I think it goes to, your definition of closing the county farm.
Right.
What we're talking about is transitioning to something new.
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
Secondly, I'd say that in terms of the scope of work, I don't know if I'd want to burden the company doing the feasibility study with doing an analysis of the county farm or county food system. That might take a lot of cost, and it's not really helping us get where we want to go. Looking at what are the opportunities would be part of the feasibility study. So I don't know if it's necessary to do an independent analysis of the food system.
That already exists.
Yeah. And just in relation to your prior comment, there had been some discussion a year or 2 ago that some people wanted to sell county property, but I think that the position of the delegation has certainly been that we are not in favor of selling the county property. We want to see it used for the benefit of the Carroll County residents.
Yeah. And our mission statement basically states that position as well. Lena, you had a comment.
I'm gonna say, I think Grafton County might have had some trouble with their farm this year.
I think it's been losing money. I've heard that, but whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I've heard that it's losing money.
I think it is. I
Yeah.
don't wanna put a number out there because I don't
Yeah.
wanna speak out of turn, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna say they might be revisiting it as well.
Yeah.
And I would say, under the scope of work, I would list everybody's agricultural research, educational, to include, but also,
Not limited to.
Not limited to.
Yes.
And the things that we all want,
Right.
everybody here wants looked at.
Yeah.
But they might say, okay, well, maybe you should raise deer here because it brings the best profit, or it's the best use of the land. We don't wanna leave anything out, but we also want to get them, their input into the
Mhm.
scope of work.
And I think, and to pick up on what your comments and Glenn's, and I think the thing we have to understand, and personally, I agree it should be as broad as possible. But what we have to understand is the broader we make that, the more expensive it's gonna be. And we have to clearly understand that, because that means whoever does the study is gonna have to, all of a sudden, spend days and hours out there following up on that track, and then come back, and then spend days and hours following up on this one. And that's money, the time is money. And I know that back in January, when I handed out just that, it was nothing more than a rough draft. It was not a response to an RFP, which didn't exist, but that Rose Wilson, and she said, based on the little that I know right now, you're looking at $27,000 to do this. And she basically outlined the time and efforts, how many people it would take and so forth, to do the research, to calculate the data, and to bring it back in. So, so we could be talking money, and I think we've got to understand that. And then it becomes a question of whether the commissioners themselves and the delegation feel, okay, we think in theory this is great, but you're running up quite a price tag here. So if we just wanted to limit it to one area, we could probably get it done for $3,000 or $4,000. But we're talking a lot of different things here, and I applaud that. I agree with that. But we've got to understand there's a price tag that's going to come with that. But I think at the end of the day, what we all want, whether it's the commissioners, whether it's the delegation, or whoever, saying, okay, we now feel that we have as good a picture as we're ever going to get on what this land and buildings can be used for, and now you can make that decision. And I'm sure that Glenn would and Ed would agree that any decision you make, you want to have a lot of good data to back up that decision. How did you arrive at that? We arrived at that because of this. And we spent a lot of money getting this information. So, Sandy.
On the Carroll County food system, there is the New England Food Network and the New Hampshire Food Network. And I've been to several of those meetings,
Yeah.
and they have documents already talking about at least regional and statewide food systems. So we can always draw on that research.
Yes, there is data out there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Dale?
We are all in agreement that we want to paint with as broad of a brush as we can. You state that if we give all this to the company that's doing the feasibility study, we're talking large sums of money.
We could be.
Right.
We could be.
My understanding as a member of this committee,
Yeah.
isn't that, should we bring all our ideas here and then focus
Mhm.
instead of, and then we decide with the commissioners and the delegation, because they're gonna be involved, what, out of all the broad things we brought in, focus it, maybe not just on the food system, and I don't know what else it would be, because we haven't started throwing those ideas around, but in order to keep the cost down, we as a committee narrow it down before we give it to the company who has is gonna do the, I'm losing my mind here.
Feasibility study.
Feasibility study, thank you. And that way, we've all decided what we think is best for this land, buildings, the people and the taxpayers, and then we go from there.
The timing and the scheduling here is important. One of the questions that I have, I had it before and I've got it now. And I think in some respects we're talking the same thing here. And that is, we're talking about the feasibility study, basically holding the public sessions and getting input from residents of the county. So what if we decide, what if we make the decision, this is what we want to touch on the feasibility study, and then whoever does it is out there holding public input sessions, and we realize that based on this input, that there were things that we missed. But we've already basically given out the contract. This is what we're willing to touch. And people say, no, you don't have that in there. So I'm just wondering, and I understand fully where Andy Kenda was coming from, but what we are doing is we're excluding public input altogether when we're trying to make the decision. What do we want discussed? What do we want to cover? And maybe someone can explain it better than I'm seeing it, but we've made the decision, then we say, okay, what do we want to talk about? Well, we've already decided what we want to talk about, and it excludes public input.
Is that our job to go out and talk to the taxpayers of Carroll County and see what they have? I mean, this is all gonna be on public, anyone can watch it, anyone can read it, I'm sure there's gonna be articles written about it. Before we started, and I knew I was on this committee, I went out and talked to people.
Yep, yep.
The biggest thing we need to do, and the input I've received, is how does it affect me?
Yep. And that's in the mission statement.
Right, but not just financially.
Yep.
The food thing, obviously, I'm a local farmer. It's kind of important to me, and I understand the broad scope of covering everything. I do see that. But if I can show taxpayer A that if he buys local and doesn't ship his money to California or Florida or wherever outside of Carroll County, that money stays here. And so that's how it affects you. So that's what we should do is, I mean, anyone's open to come to us, obviously, with their ideas and comments and questions. But if we go out to them and show them, we have this idea, and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm gonna go talk to these people about it. And they say, well, yeah, this is how that affects us, so that's a great idea. That's what you should include. So it just makes sense to me to, instead of excluding the public, put it out there as much as we can and just talk to people. And that's what they're gonna say, well, why do I care? Well, because this is why you should care. And then you make it about them, and then they're gonna talk to this guy and 3 other people, and then we'll figure it out what the focus of Carroll County should be. I'm hoping that's how it should work. So, yeah.
Glenn?
I think I'm hearing both of you saying, and I would tend to agree with that maybe the survey and listening sessions should be separated from the feasibility study RFP.
100%.
And that they do be 2 separate components. First, we do, and I think this has been discussed way back when.
Yes.
The listening session would be done first, and then there would be a feasibility study.
A listening session and surveys both.
Right.
And I say, my concern was, as I thought about this, and I'm repeating myself, and I apologize for that, but Andy felt that whoever did the feasibility study, those are steps that they would want to do. But my concern was, again, are we putting the cart before the horse on this? We've already determined those areas, that broad umbrella, what we want the feasibility study to touch. But we've excluded public input altogether in that. And so the surveys and in these public listening sessions may bring up ideas that we had never thought of at all. I'm not gonna sit here and try to convince anybody that I'm the only one that's got any ideas here. There were a lot of other people that may have ideas as well, that we just would never touch at all. But in their locale, in their experience, they would say, I like the way you're going, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And we've missed that altogether, because we've already made the decision what it is we want to touch on. Amanda?
I understand about not doing the survey, because if they're gonna come in and they're gonna also do a survey, people get sick of
Yep.
filling out surveys.
And that was Andy's concern.
But the listening sessions, I think you have a good idea of talking to the people. I mean, that's how I got elected commissioner,
Yeah.
was I talked to a lot of
Yeah.
people, and a lot of people seemed to like some of my ideas. So I'm thinking, because we want the support of the entire county with whatever we do come up with for the feasibility study, if we could have some listening sessions where we actually go and meet with some people and talk to them and let them listen to them, what they're saying, and I like what I think it was Glenn said about putting it on the internet so people could contact us and let us know what their ideas are, because a lot of people are more on the internet than they would be coming to meetings. But I don't know, maybe if we could go to selectmen's meetings and
We had talked, but the
know.
first committee had talked about that, about going to selectmen's meeting. There were 18 towns in Carroll County. plus a couple of unincorporated places. Hale's location, I believe, is unincorporated, and maybe one or two others. But you're right, I mean, that had been talked about as well. And I think the other thing is, what I found in talking with some people, I broached the question, what do you think the future of the county farm could be? I was amazed at the number of people who didn't even know we had a county farm. They said, what are you talking about? So I said, so since you don't know, we should close it down then? No, we shouldn't close it down. I said, well, what should we do with it then? I don't know. But the thing is, I think as we go forward, in an ideal world, which we don't have, is the more people we can include in this process, the more people who feel they've got a sense of ownership in this, the stronger the case is going to be, because they're a part of it. And that's how you begin to build momentum, and that's how you build, again, countywide support. And so, as I say, getting back, sounding like a broken record, I'm bothered by the fact that we're excluding all of that public input, that survey, that sense of ownership of this until after we've already made the decision of what we're going to be discussing. And I think what we're saying is, no, we don't want to do that.
I don't think we are. I
Okay,
think-
go ahead. What am I missing, Dale?
I think, can I just,
Go.
I'll roundabout get to your question.
Yep.
Would it be outside of the scope of this committee to go, I'm from Conway, to go to the County Daily Sun and say, this committee is having an open public session to hear input about the future use of the Carroll County Farm, such and such a date, and we have a meeting, Conway Fire Station, wherever, someone local, and have people come in and throw their ideas at us. We do an article in the paper, someone interviews Steve, and they say, this is what we're trying to do. Come to the meeting if you want input. Is that outside of the realm of this committee?
No, it's not outside the realm at all.
So I think
That's
what we're
talking
saying,
about.
I think what we're saying is if we do these types of things, to get back to your question, if we do these types of things prior to finishing this proposal, that will include your public, so they're informed and aware and involved, but still focusing us before we give the RFP to the people doing the study.
I think we're saying the same thing.
But we're not excluding, is what
Yeah,
the point I'm
yeah.
trying to make. If we do this
Right.
prior to, we're not gonna be excluding the public.
Exactly, but what I'm saying, to get back to this, is that what we're doing is we're taking, on the project outline, we're taking one step of it out altogether. What we're doing is, this is not gonna be part of the project outline, we're gonna do it beforehand.
Perfect.
I don't think so.
Well, so this will become
I
part of the
think-
feasibility study, and we come back and cover the same ground all over again? Go ahead, talk to me,
seems-
Sandy.
It seems to me that one very good use for having these meetings, like Dale has suggested, is to help us determine how we should structure the RFP and the contents of it. I don't think we're gonna have time to get into all the details. And that's what the company that prepares their feasibility study is going to be doing in much more depth.
But we've got to determine what we want studied in the process to
Correct.
use on that.
Correct, but we can get a high-level information from some of the residents.
Yes, yeah.
But a high level.
Yeah.
And I think that the entity that does that feasibility study itself will get more into the weeds.
Because they'll be more focused when
They're more
they have their
focused.
listening session.
Right.
Correct.
We have a broad focus.
Mhm.
And we'll have all this stuff, and then we can look at all of this stuff and say, you know, kind of intellectually, hopefully, narrow it down, so it doesn't cost all our dollars. And then the feasibility study people will take that narrower view back to the people and get their input on the narrower view, but that way we've,
Now, these are your options.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, this RFP, this draft RFP is 3 pages.
Yeah.
How detailed do we want to make this? And if this is about this, if we want to add one more page, we could probably be done in a couple weeks. You know?
In terms of drafting the RFP or?
Yeah, in terms of drafting the RFP. But if we want to get a bit more meat on it, to help guide whomever is doing the feasibility study. Then we go out and do these high-level listening sessions. Or talk individually with your friends and neighbors. Like you've been doing, like I've been doing.
Right.
I think
like
we've all
Noel
been doing.
Right, and I think
But-
that's why we're here, is because we care and we want what's best, so
Mhm.
it just, it's really common sense, I think. I might be wrong, but the more input we can get from everyone else prior to writing the RFP, the less expensive it'll be for the taxpayers, because we've narrowed it down, but we've also included all the taxpayers that want to be involved. There are some people that aren't gonna care.
Right.
But if we do our job, hopefully more than not will care and have input,
Mhm.
which will do nothing but make this easier and better.
We want to make it stronger.
Right.
We want to make it, Lino, you had some comment.
I did, during our meetings with the subcommittee, we started out with the broad listening,
Uh-huh.
and then we ended up moving towards the education and research, because that's what we found that farmers wanted, to know how to grow a better crop, to know which crops would grow better here,
Yeah.
how to test their soil, where to bring it. I mean, all those types of things are what people are looking for, especially the newer farmers that were moving to Carroll County or the startups. This is why we were moving towards the educational and research part of it. And we have the high tunnel, and we have the land
Yep.
that is basically in the center of the county, which would help north and south.
Yep, yep.
That's why the direction that we went was the educational and research instead of the food co-op.
Yep, yep.
So, I mean-
Or it's a component.
Or
Right.
as a component
Yes,
of
yes.
broader
Yeah,
use.
yeah, yeah.
But, I mean, and I was talking with local farmers, public, people like that, was, where do I get my soil samples? How do I know how to grow lettuce this time of year, or maybe I wanna grow broccoli? Or how do I get funding?
Yep, yep,
I mean, those are the types of
Yeah.
questions that are out there, not where can I bring my stuff? Because most of them
yeah.
that we found were, they have their own little segment of business, and they don't wanna give that up. And that every farmer is, you know, everybody has their,
Yeah.
Well, see, I'm different than those guys. There is nothing, and I'm on
yep,
the person who wants 250 dozen eggs a week. Can I do that myself right now?
No.
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 But why is it so difficult to find 5 other farmers that can do 50 dozen a week and then put it together and say, here's your 250 dozen?
Yeah.
I don't see the hardness in that.
It boggles my mind.
Yeah.
That could be part of the educational
It
part.
It
of
really should
Exactly.
be.
Maybe running a
Yeah.
co-op.
Yeah, you know, the thing is,
That's-
I want to just talk about.
It's a great plan.
I want to talk about the educational component again, because as you know, Glenn, the previous committee bought into that completely. Yes,
Yeah.
we're adding the research component as well as the agricultural education. And in talking with people, I had a very interesting conversation today with someone on the seacoast area who basically has a group of farmers together, and they collectively are selling. They're doing what 2 years ago, they bring their produce in, see? And he says, let me tell you my experience on this. He says, most farmers don't have a clue what their costs are in this thing. They don't understand at all what it's costing them. And he says, so they really don't know whether they're making money or not. He said, at the end of the day, they say, okay, gee, cost me this, I'm not doing this. And I was talking with someone else, and I said, okay, how do we help farmers basically put together a business plan, put together some basic accounting as to how they're running their business? And they said, those are available. So the thing is, getting back to your educational research center here now, what if we were able to, here at the county, with the educational setup, expand upon it more than just how do I grow a head of lettuce or broccoli, what's the season to grow it, but okay, look, let's take some basic bookkeeping and accounting here. This is how you run it. It's a business. You're a farmer, but it's a business. At the end of the year, did I make money or did I lose money? Now, Andy Kendall sat right here. Glenn, you were sitting there, is right. And he said 70% of farmers in Carroll County lose money. Okay. I don't know where you got that data, but that's not very encouraging. So what can we do, just looking at the farm component of this thing, what role can and should the county play in basically, under the educational research umbrella, offer these services to farmers so they can come in and take just some basic bookkeeping, accounting, or whatever to say, okay, this is what it costs you to grow a head of lettuce.
And if I might, I think that a lot of those resources are available. We've talked extensively with cooperative extension.
Yes, they're the
and
perfect
they-
entity to do it, and it
Right,
exists
and-
already.
Right, and in addition, they have other areas other than just the direct agricultural component. They have an economic development arm. They have various arms within the cooperative extension. They could play a role in that.
Yep.
We've talked to, as you know, NHTI,
Yes,
who
in
has
Concord.
has
Yes,
a
we-
sustainable
Yep.
agricultural
Yep.
certificate program that they want to expand into an associate's degree. I've also talked to career and technical education centers. We have one in Wolfboro connected with Kingswood and up at Kent High School for high school students. They would like to get involved. They don't necessarily want to take the lead, but it's something also I've talked to the Commissioner of Education about. There are a couple of regional agricultural career technical education centers in the state. Maybe we could work out something jointly with the Department of Education and NHTI to do something educational wise. So there's a lot of opportunities.
Exactly.
And that could be, and you brought it up, one of the biggest problems for starting farmers is land.
Land, exactly.
So, with these people who get an HTI certificate, they've even done it down in Concord with the refugee population. Give them an acre of land to plant their crops and so forth. Why not, when you get a certificate from NHTI, give them an acre to start out their career or something like that, so
Be
they're
part of the curriculum.
part of the curriculum,
Exactly.
sure.
It's Sandy, go ahead.
Is that like an incubator farm?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
About a year ago.
over in the place in Vermont, Burlington, over in Intervale.
Yeah. I'm familiar with
That's
that.
associated with Vermont,
Yes.
University of Vermont, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I believe so, yeah.
I've contacted that lady.
To pick up on Glenn's comment, Sandy, you remember, because it was at your house about a year ago, I invited myself to a small and beginning farmers
Yeah.
workshop at her house. And I asked the question, I identified myself, what we were looking at and trying to do here. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, what is the biggest problem that you face? It was in unison. They were all reading from the same page, lack of availability of land. That was what they said. Get back to the comment that you're making, and it's true. The other thing is, and I have I like to push the envelope. And for the last 30, 40 years, I've been doing a little farming at my house. I can grow wine grapes. I can grow them, 3 different varieties. Now, I've grown grain on my property, wheat. I've grown stuff that's right off the book here. And my point is, what I'm hoping is, for the feasibility study, as your education research center, we begin to expand, what can we grow here? I mean, what if we could grow unique grains that would allow us, a bakery, to make a loaf of bread that the world has never even heard of before.
There you go.
It's the most delicious loaf of bread anybody's ever seen, because we're using a unique grain that we can grow. I mean, I think the opportunities are just mind-boggling, that, it becomes an economic driver. But so, when I think of education and research, it's a combination of a lot of things. We can't even begin to know what the possibilities and the potential are. And my point is, small farmers like Dale and others, they do not have the resources to do that. But the county does have the resources to do that. And the county, through its research and education, begin to play with this stuff and then just throw it out to the farm community. Remember, we had the meeting here, the two of you were here, the big meeting with Andy, and the room was filled. There were people standing out in the hallway. And when we left, I walked out with a representative who I'd never seen before, haven't seen since, but we're walking out. And I don't think he's a member of the delegation anymore. I think he decided not to run. It wasn't because he was beaten. But I said, let me just throw something theoretical to you all together. I said, you're a member of the delegation. You vote on the budget. I said, what if we could put together a program here that basically collectively could increase the gross sales, not income, but gross sales to the farmers in the Carroll County by, say, $300,000. But in the process, it cost the county $50,000. Is that a good investment on the county's part? And he said, absolutely. Now, that was just one person. But the point is that they were thinking of the potential here, of what county investments could do to the farm, and therefore it benefits the residents of the county as well. So anyway, am I going in that direction? No. But what I'm saying is, we have discussed for the last 10 or 15 minutes just the possible potential of one little segment, and that's education and research.
And what's gonna happen when we educate those people, those new farmers?
There you go.
They're gonna become that part of that co-op, grow what's needed to
Exactly.
supply Carroll County residents and
There you
taxpayers.
go.
Exactly. It's, you know, there's, I've said a lot of this in the first committee meeting, and so there's a redundancy. It's probably standing back there saying, oh God, how many times have I heard this? But studies have been done that clearly show, that the more county, community, regional hands a dollar passes through before it leaves the county, the more wealthy and affluent those communities and regions and counties are. Studies have proven that. And if Lino buys 250 dozen eggs a week from local farmers, that's money that's not leaving with Cisco or Hannaford's or Shaw's. That's money that's staying right here in the county, and that gets passed through to other members as well. So there's an economic incentive here, there's an economic driver. And when we look at this feasibility study, as broad as it is, looking at different things, gets down to the SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's encompassed in all of that. What are the opportunities here? What are the strengths? So if we look at all of this stuff, we've got to make the decision. Each thing we want looked at, does it have to follow that same analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Because if it doesn't do that, how do we know if it has legs of merit at all? Now we're just guessing. And I've talked too much. Glenn,
Let me bring it back to.
please.
To, really to the process we follow.
Yep.
We've got the feasibility study here. Do we do the survey and listening sessions
Yes.
prior? And who does that? Does this committee do the survey and listening sessions? You know, a couple of years ago, I talked to Cooperative Extension about doing listening sessions, and they begged off because they wanted to participate, you know, in other ways in the feasibility stuff themselves. They didn't want to have any conflict of interest. But, you know, do you guys do the listening sessions, or does someone else do the listening sessions? Or does the people that, getting back to the way it is here,
Yeah.
the people doing the feasibility study, first part of their job is to do the listening sessions?
Amanda.
Well, I think what Dale was saying about we do a general listening session before we come up with the RFP, and then in the RFP, the people doing the feasibility study do the surveys, because then they'll be able to make the surveys pointed towards what's in the RFP. And also they can do a listening session that'll focus just on what's in the RFP. Whereas, as Dale was saying, we can do our listening sessions that are broad, wide open, out of the box. Any idea that people come up with, we'll write it down, and then we'll bring it back here, we can all discuss it. And I don't think all of us have to go to a listening session. I think 2 or 3 ought to be at a listening session. I think it should be more than one, because I know myself, as soon as somebody gives me an idea, I start thinking about it, and then I don't hear what the second person's idea is, and I'm lost. But I think maybe if we could figure out, I think the idea of maybe doing it at fire stations is a good thing, because the firemen, I've found, have always been very cooperative. And that would draw, you know, I don't think we want just the farming community involved. I think we want everybody. And if we could get it in the papers and stuff, and we could set a schedule, and, you know, maybe I think that's what we ought to start. That should be our first priority, is to work on that.
Okay, then answer Glenn's question. Who's going to be doing that? Is this committee gonna be doing that? Do we parcel that out? Because if we parcel it out, there may be money involved.
Well, I think it's the committee. I think it's as many that can show up for, we try to figure a schedule out to cover all of Carroll County. And as many of us, including the commissioner's representative and the delegation's representative, if they can come, great. If all of us can, great. If 2 or 3 of us can, great. We still do it. And we do as many of them as we see necessary to get input from anyone who wants to give it.
I would say you're gonna have to
Sorry.
prepare some things up front for those sessions.
Right.
You know, you're gonna need a map to explain, you know, what the county property is.
Yep.
Right.
Where it is.
Right, where it is. It's in Carroll
Let's
County.
start at the beginning.
Right.
Where is it?
Yeah, you know, 894 acres, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
you know,
These are the
800
buildings.
acres are woodland,
Right.
you know, et cetera.
Yep.
So you're gonna have some materials available, you know, maybe presentation-wise, just a, you know, a 10-minute overview to give people to start the discussion going.
I agree.
Yeah, a little background.
Yeah.
We can use this information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is public information,
Yeah,
right?
it sure is.
We can use this. I think you're right, and I think we need to decide if we'd like to have them at the fire stations. Somebody has to be responsible for contacting the fire stations and asking, can we have?
I think it depends on the community,
Yeah.
you know, what the best,
Whatever the best venue is.
yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
But
How many communities would we want to touch on this? As I said, there are 18. How many would we want to touch before we felt, okay, we're getting some broad input here?
I think we should see all 18.
I don't think you wanna have a listening session in all 18.
Well, you can-
How many,
Yeah, it's gonna, it'll be
representative
2018
districts are there?
before you start putting together the
How
feasibility study.
many representative districts are there?
15?
No.
8.
Is there 8?
Yes.
Eight
Oh,
districts.
Are there 8 representative
And,
districts? Okay,
and
which is like
really,
15.
there's some overlap in that.
There's quite a bit of overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6
Right.
would be the
Yeah,
areas.
5 is- yeah.
The areas you want to look at, and, you know, I would take those larger, whatever's the larger.
So would we-
towns.
so
could
would we
you do
wanna
like
do
the
8?
Wolfboro, Wakefield area, the Conway, Bartlett, Albany?
Yeah, right,
Yeah, you do a northern, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
western, and southern.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I'd say 5 at the most, you know, maybe
Yeah.
even 3 or 4.
3 or 4, I think
Yeah.
would be,
3 would probably be the best number for you guys.
Yeah,
And there's only 5 years.
right,
You don't want to do 18 of them, it's going to take you a year.
yeah,
Mhm.
no.
I do one every day.
My chickens will be hungry.
Do we want to have, there's a radio station in Conway. Are there any other radio stations in the county?
Yes.
Burke?
Yeah.
yes.
There is. Might we want to see if we can't, the Conway station has, you know, their own little drive time show. Do the other radio stations have drive time shows like that where speakers come in, they give them 20 minutes, a half an
Yeah.
hour? They do. Would we want to get involved in that?
Yeah.
You know, I don't like the look on your face.
I don't know, but he's thinking of something in there that's very dangerous.
I can just hear those
I
gears
see.
grinding away.
WASI over in Wolfboro.
Pardon me?
WASI over in Wolfboro.
Okay.
1420 on the AM
1420
dial.
and 100.7.
Okay, is that something we may want to do as well?
As many.
If you
avenues-
ask me, I will set it up for you.
Oh, really? Can
Okay.
you set up the
All
one
right.
time?
Can I get back to you on that? Okay, you know, the listening sessions are great, but as much information as we can get out there may draw more people to the listening sessions.
Well, yeah, you put
They'll
the
say, wait a
information out
minute, you
there
made a
prior.
comment there that I really want to follow up on, and I want to come to this thing, because on, you know, the drive time things, we would say, well, there's going to be a listening session, say in Wolfboro, you know, on September 15th at the
Okay.
library or something at 2 o'clock. Yes.
So before we get to that point, the first thing we gotta do is figure out what areas we're talking about.
Yes.
And where in each area.
Yes.
And when in each area.
Yes.
And we got 10 minutes to do it.
That's right. Okay, but I think there's general agreement here. We're not going to do that in the next 10 minutes, but there's general
We
agreement
can.
that this is what we want to do. This is what we
Don't
want
think
to do.
Too much.
Okay,
You
so-
do, I mean, 3, I'm hearing as a number, we want to do for the live
3 or 4.
question and answer periods. you do one in the Conway, North Conway area,
Mhm.
you do one in the Wolfboro area,
Mhm.
and then I've come up with 2 of the 3.
I'd say Tamworth area in that middle of the county,
There you go.
What about up in Chatham,
Over.
Jackson?
that might be too far.
What about down
North
in
Conway.
Wakefield?
Well, Wakefield,
Or
Wolfboro.
Wakefield, Wolfboro, you'll
Right.
cover.
Maybe something
Well,
more.
Wakefield, Effingham, Ossipee is
Yeah.
more of a group than
Yeah.
Wolfboro.
That's right.
And you got Moultonboro.
So if you did an
Wolfboro
Ossipee, Madison, Wakefield, or Ossipee, Wakefield,
Effingham.
Tamworth.
Effingham, Tamworth?
Yeah, I would take that middle section
Yeah.
and make one there, because there's a lot of farming opportunities in that area. You might be able to draw quite a few off that 16 and 25 corridor.
In Ossipee.
Ossipee, Tamworth, Sandwich.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Freedom,
Yeah, so,
Moultonboro, you'd be able to
like-
draw off that corridor.
The Conway radio station would hit probably 7 or 8 towns.
Yep. We hit all of them. Sorry, WASI hits all of them.
Okay.
Would you like to disclose your connection with WASR?
I am a principal owner.
Oh, okay.
Just want to be
As I said,
clear. Want to be
that
open.
smirk in your face, I said, okay, there's something missing here.
It's called diversification.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so we decided that radio is one avenue that we want to use then.
But we gotta
Pro-
find the areas first, and then we gotta find out when and
Well, I think we
where.
found the areas, haven't we?
Areas, I find the location, and then we can get you some airtime.
Yeah, okay.
So,
All right, so do you want to use newspapers? Let us to the editor.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, I don't think
just
there's anything-
send out a press release to the papers in that area and they'll run it.
Yeah,
so can we find the areas, please?
You wanna write some?
You want specific locations, you're gonna have to find those, in those areas.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, can we have the specific areas? Wakefield, Ossipee, Effingham would be one,
Tamworth, Freedom, Moultonboro.
Right.
One.
Tamworth, Freedom.
Conway, North Conway, Bartlett.
Freedom's a long ways from Moultonboro.
Damon Steer, who writes for the
Yeah, but you can-
Conway Daily Sun, has
In the
always
middle, so
been
it's,
very
maybe
interested
20
in
minutes
this.
each way.
What other media? Radios, newspapers, what other media?
I think you've covered it.
You
Okay.
can also put them on the county website.
Don't forget government oversight.
Well, yeah, we're getting that right now.
Can I add something?
Okay,
Please.
You're here, go ahead.
The last ad hoc committee meeting that we had for the farm, I created a Facebook page. It's called the Carroll County Farm and Agricultural Learning Center.
Ooh, all right.
It already has 400 members. And just recently, there seems to have been an influx. And this is where I post these meetings and where I posted all the other meetings, so people are waiting with bated breath to know what's going
Okay,
on.
and this
with
is, so if you
area.
go to your website, that'll show up
No,
as to go to.
no,
so-
it's separate,
it's
it's a
all
separate website.
Okay, what's the website, please?
Face page.
Facebook.
Page.
Facebook,
Facebook, okay.
and it's Carroll County Farm and Agricultural Learning Center. So whenever I put an alert out or post a meeting video, the 400 people that are on this Facebook page get alerted, so they know it's out there.
That's great, thank you.
Now,
Thank
some of
you.
them may be from Maine, because in Facebook, you can target towns only, but it may have a little bit of a, since you're targeting friends and friends of friends,
Yep.
some of them may live other places, so you don't want to use it for a survey. But it's a good indicator of interest, and it's another avenue to
Yeah,
advertise.
yeah. The Carroll County Farm Bureau has a Facebook page as well, and we may want to use that. As we've discussed, and I think there's general agreement here, and that is to get this message out before as many people as we can. Let them know what's going on and encourage them to give us feedback and input as well. And if we go to both of those, Ed's website and Carroll County Farm, the newspapers, and begin to highlight when we're going to have those listening sessions, that may increase the participation. My biggest concern is you have one of these things and 5 people show up. But if you really advertise it and promote it, more than just word of mouth, but through the radio and the newspapers and so forth and the Facebook, you may end up with 40 or 50 people. I mean, the input could, and it's how you basically present it, the things that we want to touch upon here. This is what we want to say. Your feedback and input is important to us as we go forward. Yes?
I would also, I have to also disclose that I already contacted the Granite State News, Carroll County Independent, and Conway Daily Sun, so they're already aware of this.
Great, thank you.
That's number one. So I would also suggest that you will often hear from the public that if you wanted public comment so badly, why are you having your meetings at 3 o'clock in the afternoon where we cannot attend? So I would just consider that.
Yep.
And maybe you might want to change the time
Okay.
and the day you're doing it.
Well,
because farmers cannot come here
Yeah.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Our listening sessions could be in the evening. The
Evening
listening
or
session-
Saturdays.
or Saturday.
Yeah, for these meetings and
Or-
for the listening.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
right.
you're talking about these meetings here, right? The time for these meetings.
Any meetings.
Any meeting.
So you want our listening sessions in the evening then?
Or Saturday.
Or Saturday, if you have.
Okay, okay.
You know,
good.
there's a,
Yeah.
some, older people, such as myself, getting out during the day is easier than getting out at night.
And I would start, or maybe holding these in the fall, because a lot of farmers markets happen right at this time.
I was thinking that's a good point. I was thinking that as well.
Maybe,
Yes, Amanda?
if we could figure out the areas, because some areas have more farmers markets during the week than they do on weekends.
But
A lot of
usually
them on
also,
Saturday.
So when
usually
we
also
fig-
this,
When we figured out what the area was, then we could figure out where we were gonna have it, and then we could talk about what would be the best time for the population of that particular area.
many of these farmers markets has someone who's in charge, farmer or the market,
Yep, yep.
let them know when these sessions are gonna be also, so that they can tell the people who rent, booths and so
Yep,
forth, set
yep,
up tents
yep.
at their farmers
Yeah,
market.
yeah, yeah.
It-
Dale?
For our next meeting, should we focus on some sort of tri-fold information packet / something as to what we are about to distribute to those local farmers markets, to hand out? Because there's a large one in Tamworth,
Yep.
the one in Conway is becoming stronger weekly,
Mhm.
and there are others at Wolfboro, and
Yep.
I mean,
Well, Wakefield.
those are the people you're gonna want.
No.
As far as the farming end of this, those are the people that purchase and use those farmers markets to buy their wares are the people that are gonna be off the top interested in what's going on here.
I might wait until you have the date set for the listening
Yeah.
sessions, so that can be on that little handout.
Yes, I
agree.
Yeah.
And a link to the survey.
Yep, yep, yep. That makes sense.
'Cause-
Sandy?
One suggestion might be is to have a table or a booth at a farmer's market. I know that the Tamworth market will allow and provide a tent for people that are public service type,
And that wouldn't be any cost to us?
correct? Just
Okay.
somebody's time.
Just the time?
And I already have a table at the Conway Farmers Market, so we got that one covered.
Okay.
Okay, now what you're already doing is you're tipping the scale for people coming to the listening sessions. You are no longer doing the general population. You are now focusing on farmers markets and farmer market attendees. You're doing it again, it's getting too narrow. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to pass out those same pamphlets at supermarkets, at hospitals, at, I don't know, everywhere.
Well, is
If you're going to be-
that,
you
or is
can't
it
be
just one
focused.
segment? Because what I've been writing down here, and maybe I've been misreading some of this, we've talked about doing the drive time on the radio, and that's a general broad market.
Yeah.
We've talked about press releases in the newspaper that Glenn had suggested. We're talking about the county website, and we're also talking about Ed's Facebook there. And that's a very broad distribution. That's not singling out any particular segment. I think what we're talking about here is with having a presence at the farmers markets, is basically just reinforcing that. I mean, they may have already been inundated with the drive time and the newspaper press releases and everything else, but we're just hitting a market that we one segment of the market that we know should have a real interest in this.
Because it's not just the people who have stands at the farmer
It's
market.
the
it's
customers
people
that
who
are buying it.
Customers there
Right,
also.
exactly, who are buying it, that 150 dozen eggs. But Dale has brought up a good point, and it's 5 o'clock. Let's flesh this out on how we're gonna be basically marketing this going forward. I think we've had a lot of good ideas here, a lot of thinking, and let's kind of flesh this out with the goal that next week, 2 weeks from today when we meet, we can really begin to put this right down, the scheduling and so forth, maybe some ideas for handouts, and how we want to, whether it's press releases or the radio, basically what it is we want to discuss. What are those points that we want to make? Lino?
I just want to say that might be the Friday before Labor Day.
It is,
It is.
it is, it's
Oh,
is
September
it?
1st.
You might want to,
Okay, why don't we do it the Friday after?
Well, I have no objection to the Friday before Labor Day.
Okay,
Which would be,
it's up to you guys. I mean.
yeah,
September
yeah,
1st.
okay.
September
Is
1st.
everybody comfortable, thank you, Lino, is everybody comfortable with that? It's the start of a long weekend? It doesn't interfere with anybody's plans? Okay.
Well, it may seem be.
no, I'm trying to think. 2 weeks from today, or from tomorrow, 2 weeks from today is September the
First.
20
The 1st.
You're right, okay, I lost a week. I lost a week.
And you're never gonna get it back.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I lost a week.
Yeah,
Oh, well.
summer's almost over.
I know.
Do we do it then next week or the week after?
All right.
2
2
weeks.
2 weeks, September 1st. Is
September
that bad
1st
for
will be
you?
the next one.
No, it's just that it is the beginning of the Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, this is good. A lot of people-
Okay, so I'm gonna ask all, and Lino, Glenn, we've got some great input from the two of you, and I welcome you. I welcome you to come to these meetings.
That next one might be.
A little tough, I know that this is a busy time of the year for you, but I welcome you. Mark is the delegation's representative, but there's no reason why your input can't be heard as well, and I
These are
welcome you to come.
Public meetings, so everybody's
Exactly,
invited.
everybody come. Okay, everybody's assignment is to basically focus on how we're gonna be basically out there marketing this, getting that word out.
Could we kind of concentrate on how we're going to divide the county up for area?
Well, someone can take
And-
that on and present it then. I don't think we need to make that decision right now. We're talking about radio, we're talking about newspapers, we're talking about the county websites. So how we want to divide those things up could be certainly part of the discussion.
And maybe some talking points in terms of getting that message out.
Exactly.
What are the
That's-
talking points?
Exactly. That's what I'd like us to focus on as well, is the points. If we're talking on drive time at the radio station in Conway, I want that message to be exactly the same as the one I'm making in Wolfboro. I don't want all of a sudden a mixed message here.
Right.
I mean, if the newspaper, the press release is going out, we want that message to be the same, to be consistent. We're
But
hammering
before
away
you
at-
do
Yes.
that, we have to have the areas separated out, and we have to find a place in each area and a time and a date to have the meeting. And then you can go on the radio and tell
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, okay, yeah. All right. Lino,
One last one,
okay,
I'm gonna say. I
you
know
get the
that-
last word.
I know that we do a community bulletin, like what upcoming events.
Yeah.
I think Greg does the same thing. I think instead of getting on and talking, I think maybe just getting these meetings out there as, you know, upcoming events and stuff like that. I think that would probably send the same message across the county.
Yeah,
Mhm.
gotta be consistent.
Easier, too.
And I think next meeting, we want to more clearly define what that message is. What is it that we want to get out there? What are those talking points? You get the last word, Lino. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by a non-member.
All right, second. All those in favor?